So I'm sure we're all pretty familiar with the story of Alice in Wonderland. And I won't run through the entire synopsis of what is a pretty like trippy story. But I want to tell you about Alice and her interaction with the Cheshire Cat. And yeah, David, Disney's actually is quite a bit different from the Lewis Carroll. Fun fact, quick tangent, I actually read the full Lewis Carroll like annotated version as a part of a like a project in middle school, I think. Gosh. And I actually made a paper mache Cheshire Cat, which I wish I had with me today to show all of you, but it's probably in a closet somewhere at my parents' house. Anyway, what does remain the same in both the book and the Disney version is that Alice is kind of wandering around and she's a bit lost in Wonderland. And she happens upon the Cheshire Cat who's hanging out in a tree. And so she says to the Cheshire Cat, "Would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here?" Because she's, kind of wandering around. And she says, "Would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here?" And the Cheshire Cat replied with his sleepy voice and said, "Well, that depends a good deal on where you want to get to." That depends on where you want to get to. And Alice replied, "Well, I don't much care where," because she wasn't really heading to any specific destination. She was just kind of wandering around. So she said, "Well, I don't much care where." To which the Cheshire Cat replied, "Then it doesn't much matter which way you go." It doesn't much matter which way you go. And a lot of times in the course of our days, our weeks, months, quarters, even, we can start to feel a little bit lost and trying to figure out what to do next, which project to pursue next, which hire to prioritize next, which item on our to-do list even we should do next. We can feel a little bit lost because, like we've talked about before, sometimes everything feels important or every possibility feels like it could turn into something good. So when you don't know where to go or you don't know what's next, there are three ways actually that we'll cover today that will help give you that direction, that will help be that North Star and help you answer that question, what's next, when you're not sure what it looks like, what's next. And before we dive into what's next, I always like to just in case you're new here, I want to tell you a little bit about me and my background as your time management coach today. So I kicked off my career as a scheduler to a United States congressman, managing one of the most hectic schedules in the entire country, spending sometimes 10 to 12 hours, in front of an Outlook calendar, moving things around for someone who somehow had to be everywhere at once. After spending time in DC, I'm a Louisiana girl and I really missed home and all of the food and culture and just things that make Louisiana unique. So I moved home and kicked off a 10-year career in the 24/7 world of crisis communications and government affairs. And I don't know if you caught that, but that was the 24/7 world of crisis communication and government affairs. And as you can imagine, doing anything 24/7. And for me, that looked like managing clients through catastrophes like oil spills, hurricanes, tornadoes, droughts, floods, universities on the brink of collapse, nonprofit embezzlement schemes. There were some pretty crazy things that I contended with on a day-to-day basis while I was helping clients through their darkest times. Every day was order to be made out of crisis and a crisis to be managed. And after a while, it really began to take a toll on me, being available all the time, being on all the time. And so cue the burnout, right? That's when the burnout set in. And so yeah, stressful. It's quite stressful. Don't know if I would recommend it to anybody. That's when the burnout set in. And so after this 10-year career of managing other people in their darkest times, I suddenly realized that I was the crisis that needed to be managed. So I walked away in search of something better and in search of something else. And I wasn't sure quite what that was going to be, but through trial and error, trying out a lot of different things, diving into every productivity and time management book I could get my hands on, I knew that somehow I wanted to either help others dig themselves out of that dark place of burnout that I had been in, or help them avoid it altogether. And so now I'm a time management coach and I'm host of a podcast all about time management and productivity. And I'm your time management coach as head of community at Clockwise. And I tell you that story not to say, oh, look, I'm a time management coach. I want you to know that I've been there. I know what it's like to struggle with time management and productivity and to want a better way. And I'm not some magical time management unicorn. We can all adopt time management and productivity techniques on our path to deciding what better work-life balance looks like for all of us. And so that's part of what we're going to do today is really dive into answering this question, what's next? Because so often this can be pretty stress inducing. I mean, put the word stress in the chat box if you've ever had your head spinning about, okay, what do we do next? Where do we go from here? How do I decide how to spend my time and what is worthy of like my decision making? How should I spend my time and put my talents? Where should I lead my team? On top of that, when you're a manager and you're in charge of others in their direction. So we're going to talk about these 3 ways that you can answer the question, what's next? And the first is by knowing your vision and your values. The second is by harnessing your energy. And the third is by blocking your time. So we're going to dive into each of these 3 strategies today. And I know some of them might sound familiar if you've joined past office hours before, but what's different is the way that we're going to put this together to solve this problem of the question, what's next? So we're going to start out by diving into your vision and values. And first off, we're going to talk vision. And vision, knowing your vision, is a way of answering the question, where are you going? So there are a lot of different ways that we can think about having a vision and how it helps us answer that question, what's next? There are a number of different vision casting exercises and methods for writing a vision statement. But at the core of it, a vision is something that should motivate, excite, and inspire you. A vision is something that's forward looking and it's aspirational. Now, out of curiosity, you can put a yes or a no in the chat box. Do you know your company's vision just off the top of your head? Do you happen to know your company's vision off the top of your head? Okay, David does. All right. So we've got some folks that know their company's vision. And that is a critical first step, because when you know that vision and you're able to recall it, it's able to shape, it's able to direct the way that you make those big decisions about what to do next. But we can take this a step further, because I find that time management and productivity is all about using strategies to zoom out, big picture, but to also zoom in. And so I would ask you, if you manage a team, or even if you're on a team, does your team, maybe it's your department, maybe it's your squad or your team within your department, does your team have its own unique vision? Put the word team in the chat box if your team has a vision. And then finally, another way that we can zoom in even further. Okay, I love this. We've got some folks that their teams have their own unique vision. We can zoom in even further and select a personal vision for ourselves. And so, we've got that company vision that we're all working toward. We've got that team vision that we're uniting our team around, whether that's, a marketing team or your development team or sales team, whatever that is. You've got a shared vision that you're all able to align around. And then finally, you've got your personal vision. I love that. So David says personal vision, that's what's missing. But he's got personal core values determined though, which is great because that's about to come into play. And so as you're thinking about action items, as you walk away from our time together today, if you don't have a vision for your team and you don't have a personal vision for yourself, I would highly encourage you to take some time to create that vision, to articulate what is that statement that will motivate, excite, and inspire you, that's forward looking and aspirational. My vision is to make time management more accessible for busy professionals so they can have better work-life balance and live with confidence, clarity, and intention. That's something that's aspirational. You never reach the finish line. So a vision is something that you never quite reach the finish line because it's something that is always aspirational. Something can always be more accessible. You can always be better. You can always do more. And so keep that in mind as you're creating your vision statement. And regarding the team statement, before we move on, this is an excellent activity to do at team offsites or retreats. And I know that for a lot of us, we're gearing up for team offsites and we're planning retreats. A lot of us have the halfway point of the year coming up. And so we're thinking about what we've done in the first 2 quarters and what's ahead. And so if your team doesn't have a vision, now is a great time to articulate that together. So next up is values. In addition to using your vision as your North Star to decide what's next, we've got our values. And our values answer the question and articulate what's most important to us. And so I always like to remind people that your personal core values are not a long list of words that sound nice. That's not what we're doing here. Instead, core values should be about 5 to 7 words. Any more than that, and you begin to diminish the power of them. Any fewer, and they may not really cover all the bases. So 5 to 7 seems to be a sweet spot. And those words should be your foundational beliefs, those 5 to 7 words that represent what truly is most important to you. And just like we zoomed out and we thought about our company's values as, that cornerstone, I would also ask the same question. Does your team have unique core values? Now, a lot of times in a corporate setting, our teams are going to adopt and continue to live out the values that our companies espouse. But one really fun team building exercise could be to decide, in addition to our company's values, what is it that our team truly values? What are our team's core values in addition to the company's values that serve as our path forward, that serve as our North Star? And then I would encourage you to zoom in and think about your personal core values. Now, we know that David's got his personal core values determined, but if you know your personal core values, just put the word values in the chat box and let me know. So going through the process of identifying your personal core values can be an incredibly, I don't want to say transformational moment, but it can be an exercise that really helps you understand yourself even on a deeper level, because you're thinking through I love that, clarity and Zen. Clarity, give me more clarity. Because in thinking through what are those values, you have to also decide what aren't a part of those values. What words are not your core values? Because you have to choose. 5 to 7 is a pretty small number. And so going through that process of determining your personal core values can be incredibly just solidifying and grounding as you are making decisions. In the past 2 years, we have all encountered a lot of uncertainty and a lot of changes. We've experienced just topsy-turvy, tumultuous happenings. And at times when the ground feels really shaky, it can feel tough. It can feel hard, challenging to know what to do next. And you're asking yourself, okay, in this situation that I've never been in before, what's the next right action? How do I do the next right thing? And whenever you're faced with that question of what's next in an unfamiliar situation, as long as you've got your company values or your team values, and most importantly, even your personal core values, you've got that guide. You've got that lens to look at everything through and ask yourself, does this align with my core values? Does this align with who I am and what's most important to me? And a lot of times, whenever we stop and we consider what is a tough decision, if we stop and ask ourselves, does this align with my core values? Then we find that the decision is a lot easier than we might have originally thought. And so I would actually encourage you, if you have your personal core values articulated, don't let them just live in a Word doc or a note on your phone or a notebook from a conference you went to a couple years ago. I would encourage you to type up, print out, post those core values so that others can see them. And David, I love that you've shared yours. If anybody else would like to share your core values in the chat, I would encourage you to do that. See, Alyssa says to post-it note those values and hang them up, because when you keep them top of mind, they truly become that decision-making tool. Let me see if I can put mine in the chat real quick. Mine are authenticity, curiosity, courage, legacy, and intention. Authenticity, curiosity, courage, legacy, and intention. And Christy, I love that you brought up those conference notebooks are filled with good notes that easily get forgotten. You know, I don't know if you've ever done a core values exercise at a conference or in a seminar, but I do find that they can be pretty common at team building activities or things that we attend. And so often when we're in the moment and we're doing something like a core values exercise, we have so many amazing light bulb moments, and then they just kind of collect dust. So maybe that's your second action item, is to find that stack of conference notebooks and pour through them and see what kind of gems are waiting for you inside. Okay, so far we've talked about how one way that you can decide what's next is by getting clear about your vision and your values, thinking through what your company vision and values are, possibly creating a separate vision and values for your team, and then really defining and articulating your personal values and your personal vision, because of how that will shape the decisions that you make just beyond your professional life. And Alyssa, I love that you've shared yours: kindness, loyalty, contentment, growth, and gratitude. Those are fantastic. So next, after vision and values, the next strategy that you can use to decide what's next is to harness your energy, And so we actually talked about how to harness your energy a few office hours ago. And in case you weren't able to make that one, I've popped a link to the YouTube video with the full replay. But what we talked about in that office hours, I'll give you a quick recap because it is so helpful. So we all of us have one of three different biological chronotypes, which basically means that all of us have one of three unique rhythms to our day. Now, you can group these three biological chronotypes in three pretty familiar, or I could say two pretty familiar terms that we're all familiar with: our morning larks, our night owls, and our third birds. So third birds are our people who are kind of in between a morning lark and a night owl. And so I'll tell you a little bit about each one, and then I would love to know which one you are in the chat box. So our morning larks typically experience their highest energy peak in the mornings. They feel kind of low in the afternoons, and then they have another energy rebound, you could say, in the afternoons. On the flip side, our Third birds, are our night owls, have their highest energy point a little bit later in the day. We're talking like evening or early afternoon. Evening is when they really come alive. And then third birds, they have their energy peak typically like mid morning. And that's that then it's also helpful to know that there are three different distinct energy phases that we all experience throughout the day. So we all have a peak and we all have a trough, which is our lowest energy point of the day. And then we all have a rebound, which if the peak is right here, your rebound is kind of like right here. It's a lot higher than a trough, but it's not quite as high as that natural peak. So whether you're a morning lark, a night owl, or a third bird, we all experience these three different phases. But the difference is that we experience them in a different order. Like David, our night owl, he starts the day, as night owls do, in rebound. So night owls actually start their day kind of here. And then in the afternoon, they experience that trough. And then in the early evening is when they feel that peak. That's when they're at their best. And you mentioned, I hate that offices and restaurants are basically only open until 10 p.m. And his natural schedule would be to sleep from 3 to 11 a.m. I mean, that is something that is so important to know about yourself. And Alyssa, I feel you, that afternoon slump from 1 to 3, everyone, even night owls, even third birds, even morning larks, everyone feels a slump in the afternoon. That is when that is when we all have a natural energy trough. And Raphael just sent me a message to let me know that he is definitely a night owl too. So fun fact, night owls are only about 25% of the population. The other 3/4 are a combination of third birds and morning larks. Third birds being the most common. There are more third birds than any other. And like Alyssa said, that she has that trough between 1 and 3 p.m. Studies have shown that the lowest energy point in the day for most workers is 2:55 p.m. 2:55 p.m. Write that down, because when like we said, we're trying to answer the question, what's next? If it's 2 o'clock or if it is 2:30 and you're trying to decide what's next, and that 2:55 is the lowest energy point in the day, you're probably going to not want to do your most important work that requires intense focus, right? Instead, you're going to want to do low impact work. So this is how we match up the right work at the right time. We want to answer the question, what's next? Sorry, Jack, I would recommend coffee, a glass of water, or maybe have a peppermint, because peppermint oil can help you kind of wake up. But I will tell you this, meetings which require collaboration are actually really great to do, or really great when you are feeling low energy. And I'll tell you why. Whenever we are a little tired, whenever we're in that energy trough of the day, that typically happens in the afternoon, our inhibitions are lower. Our inhibitions are lower, which makes us more amenable to collaboration, and it results in broader brainstorming. So if you're trying to decide what to do next, and that you're heading into that trough period of the day, ask yourself, what is something low impact that I can do? What is something that requires brainstorming? What is something that possibly requires collaboration? And look, David says, wow, that's basically how I try to order my workday. Creative in the morning, meetings midday, and heavy thought-oriented work toward the end. And you being a night owl, you start in the rebound, then you have your trough, and then you have your peak. And that's a great question. How can one focus when they have low energy at 2:55 p.m.? So that's a great question. Whenever we are in that low impact trough time of day, the most strategic thing to do is, so let's say you know that you're at your best in the morning. If you can schedule, if you can use peak, that peak focused time for focused work, so that you then save the lower impact, more mundane type of tasks in the afternoon, when you know that you have that low energy point. So here's the thing. We all have a variety of different things on our to-do list, things on our plate, different types of work that we have to do during the day. And so one thing that I would encourage you to do is to actually think through, okay, what is the work that I do that requires intense focus? And then what are the things that I do that require less focus? That things like scheduling meetings, creating agendas for meetings, following up, doing emails. One really great way to use that low impact trough time of day is by doing emails, because we got to do emails, right? They're kind of communication, checking in on Asana, updating tasks. That low impact time of day, that trough time, is a really great time to answer the question, what's next, with low impact work. And here's the thing. If you have to focus because you have no other choice but to get something high impact, high focus done during your trough period, this is when you've got to pull out all the stops for focus. And again, I can give you some tips here, but only you can know what that is. I know that if I put in my AirPods and I listen to brown noise, I'm serious. There's like this YouTube video. It's 8 hours of brown noise. Just Google brown noise and you'll find it. When I've got to focus, if I'm feeling tired, I will listen to brown noise, because it just helps me drown out everything else and get the work done, even when maybe I'm not feeling the best. And Alyssa actually says, one thing I've started doing now that the weather is warming up is taking lunch walks outside. That afternoon low energy point is also a really great time of day to take a break. We've got to have breaks to continue being productive. So studies have found that we can really only get about 4 hours of true focused, intense work done each day. 4 hours. We've got an 8-hour workday. Typically, most of us have an 8-hour workday. And within that 8-hour workday, we've only got 4 hours before our brain, like before the law of diminishing returns kicks in. And that attempt at focus actually does more harm than good. We start to slow down. We start to make mistakes. But by taking breaks, by giving yourself that time to recharge, you're able to keep going. And so that afternoon slump is just begging for a break. So, how to decide what's next? Harness your energy. Know when your peak time is and do focused work then. Know when your energy trough is and take a break or do low impact work. And then know when your rebound is and do creative work or work that requires focus, but maybe not your most important work. So far, we've talked about how to know your vision and values, how to harness your energy. So let's dive into the third strategy to decide what's next, and that's blocking your time. So where are my time blockers? Just put the word block in the chat box and let me know, because I'm sure that if you're at office hours, chances are you're a time blocking fan, just like I am. If you're not familiar with time blocking, I'll tell you all about it. Time blocking, yes, I knew we were going to have some time blocking fans in here. Time blocking is creating space in your calendar for the items on your to-do list, for your tasks, for your project work. Clockwise already time blocks your focus time for you by carving out those 2 hours of uninterrupted space so that you can get work done. Time blocking is taking those things on your to-do list, taking those tasks in your Asana or your Trello or ClickUp, whatever you're using, and putting them on your calendar. And there are two ideal times during your week to time block in order to answer that question, what's next? Because when you have that appointment already time blocked in your day, you don't have to ask the question, what's next? Because it's already time blocked on your calendar. That means you're making fewer decisions. That means you're spending less time spinning your wheels, deciding what to do next, because you've got your time blocks for the day or for the week ready to go. So those two times during the week that are ideal to set up your time blocks are your weekly planning session and your daily startup routine, your weekly planning session and your daily startup routine. So I would love to know, put the word weekly in the chat box if you do a weekly planning session. And then let me know what day of the week you do your weekly planning session, because I always love to see when during the week people do their sessions. Okay, so Stacy does her weekly on Sunday. Christy does her weekly planning session on Monday. Okay, we've got some more Mondays, Sunday week. Okay, so we've got a pretty good mix. Oh, Alyssa does one on Sunday for personal and Monday for work. I like that. I do something similar, Sunday for personal and Monday for work, to think about the week ahead. So a weekly planning session, I know that many of you are familiar, your weekly planning session pros, but I'll give a quick recap for those who are watching the replay who might be new to the concept of a weekly planning session. So a weekly planning session is basically time that you carve out each week to get a bird's eye view of the week ahead. This is when you make decisions about how you want to spend your time based on deadlines, your priorities, based on your vision and your values. This is when you take a look at potential obstacles and tough spots in your week, and you identify and create solutions before you run into them. A weekly planning session is also a great time to check in on your goals, to check in on your budget, whether it's your department budget or your personal budget. And it's a great time to meal plan. I don't know about you, but I am not nice to be around when I'm hungry. And there is nothing worse than opening up the fridge at 7:30 p.m. and all you've got in there is a packet of ketchup and some soy sauce, because that does not make a meal. And so whenever you do a weekly planning session on Monday or Sunday or whatever day is best for you, you're able to plan your week all at once, which means that you're able to step into Monday feeling calm and prepared because you have a plan. And so your weekly planning session is a great time to set your time blocks for the week. And if you don't feel comfortable planning the whole week because you want to leave some room for surprises, because life happens and we get curveballs all the time, you could instead time block out your most important work. You can time block out your most important work, giving yourself a realistic amount of space to adjust as needed throughout the day. You can also consider time blocking just Monday and Tuesday, and then filling in the rest of the week as you go along, allowing for those changes and those curveballs that come up. Oh yeah, David, let me tell you about that. Connecting meal planning with a weekly time block planning session. I find that to be so helpful because if I know that one day is going to be incredibly meeting heavy or very work heavy, I might not feel like prepping a complicated meal in the evenings. I might just want to reheat leftovers or order takeout. And whenever you plan in advance, whenever you have that bird's eye view and you say, okay, I've got a late meeting on Wednesday, so that should probably be takeout or leftovers, you can decide on Tuesday, I'm going to cook something that has enough to make leftovers with so that I can make things easier on future me when Wednesday rolls around. And so to me, that's why meal planning really goes hand in hand with that weekly planning session, which then leads you to do a grocery order or make your grocery list. And then it's just one thing after the other. So the second ideal time during the week to create your time blocks in order to answer the question, what's next, is during your daily startup routine. So put the word startup in the chat box if you have a daily startup routine. And I'm going to take a sip of my coffee. Okay, so David's got a daily startup routine. Let me tell you about a daily startup routine because chances are you have one. Chances are you have one and you just don't know it. So, a daily startup routine is kind of like your morning routine for the workday. So, I believe that there are 5 essential routines that help us show up as our best self. A morning routine obviously helps you start your day, get your day off on the right foot. An evening routine that helps you prep for a good night's sleep. Then the third is your weekly planning session, which you do, once a week on Friday afternoon or Sunday or Monday morning. And then the final 2 are your workday startup and your workday shutdown routine. So these are the bookends of your workday, kind of like the morning routine and the evening routine of your workday. A daily startup routine. Yeah, a daily startup routine is what enables you to go from not work brain to work brain. And this is especially critical if you work from home, because when we have a physical commute, in the car, driving somewhere, parking, walking, that is our natural transition that signals to our brain. It's a physical activity that signals to our brain that it's just about time to get to work. Okay. But when we're working from home, when we're working remotely, we don't necessarily have that same physical commute. That is a physical signal that it's time to make a mental mindset shift to work. And so when you have a daily startup routine, it's, 3 to 5 things that you do every single day in a short time frame. We're talking no more than 10-15 minutes max. Your daily startup routine should be no longer than what you can fit on a Post-it note. It should be that short. And you should go through it in the same order every time. And what this does is when you begin to go through this order, this physical routine signals to your brain that it's go time, that it's time to focus on work. And so one of the things that you can do during that daily startup routine is to time block your day. So a few examples that you could include in your daily startup routine could be opening your laptop. Yep. Opening up your Slack or your email or your task management system, assessing your priorities for the day, assessing your current meetings, and then time blocking your day. Yeah. Okay. So Alyssa says, yes, she does have this routine. You pack up your laptop at the end of the workday. Oh, that's great. You store it away. See? And on the flip side, your shutdown routine is your routine that helps take you from work brain to not work brain. It helps you close the open loops in your mind and really shift into engaging in personal time. Having a shutdown routine is what enables you to be more present with your friends and family and to kind of stop worrying about work for a little while, which I know can be hard, especially when we have all these open loops. But with that daily shutdown routine, you're telling yourself, I am done for the day. And you may want to incorporate time blocking into your daily shutdown routine. There are two options here. You can either time block your day at the beginning of the day, or you can time block tomorrow at the end of the day. So David does a mind sweep, sets Slack to a nighttime emoji. Love that. Turns off notifications and closes his laptop. So that is a phenomenal shutdown routine. And thank you so much for sharing, Alyssa, David, all of this inspiration that we can take and use to create our startup and shutdown routines. Okay. So what's next? What's next? Today, we've talked about 3 strategies that we can use to answer the question, what's next? We can use our vision and our values, whether it's our company vision and values, our team vision and values, or our personal vision and values to answer those big what's next questions. We can harness our energy and match the right work with our right energy levels to do the right work at the right time by knowing whether we are a morning lark, a third bird, or a night owl, and then pairing our most important work with our peak energy time. And then finally, we can use time blocking to go ahead and carve out space either once a week during our weekly planning session, or we can do it in the morning during our daily startup routine, or we can time block the next day in our daily shutdown routine. So we have plenty of new strategies that we can use to answer the question, what's next? And then what's next? I want to invite all of you to become a founding member of the Clockwise Collective. So I know that this is, like I've said, this is our last office hours, but we want to stay in touch. We want to continue the conversation. We want to keep talking about ways that we can make time for what matters. And so we've created a forum called the Clockwise Collective. And you who are here in office hours right now are the very first to get the invitation to join us inside the Clockwise Collective. And so you can actually jump into the Clockwise Collective by heading to, I'm going to put it in the chat, getclockwise.com/collective. Okay, that should take you straight there. And so this is going to be our hub for, like I said, continuing the conversation about productivity, for learning from each other, for learning how we can just be better managers, better leaders, lead our teams with our vision and with our values. And so I really hope that you'll check out the collective and join us over there, because that's where we're going to continue the conversation all throughout the rest of the year. You'll also be some of the first to know, the collective will be some of the first to know about new product announcements and features and events and other things that are happening in the world of Clockwise. And so, like I said, you guys, you are getting the founding membership invitation, and I would love to see you over there. And so as we are wrapping up our time together today, I know there are 2 questions in the question box, so I'm going to answer those. And if you have any other questions, please put them in the chat, or just send them my way. And so here's the first question. It's from David, and it says, how would you suggest building the discipline to follow time blocks, especially for those of us who tend to rebel against our calendars? Okay, that's a great question. And so, David, I would actually ask you, are you familiar with the book Better Than Before by Gretchen Rubin? Are you familiar with the book Better Than Before by Gretchen Rubin? The book Better Than Before by Gretchen Rubin talks a lot about habits and how we can, David, you need to read, that needs to be your next book. It talks a lot about habits. So the foundation of the book is all about habits. How do we make habits actually stick? But it is different from any book I have. Oh, Alyssa, thank you so much for sharing that. It is different from any book that I've ever read about habits before, because instead of just saying, because I've read Atomic Habits, I've read other books about habits, this book, Better Than Before, actually dives into the fact that we all have very different personalities. We have different motivations, different ways of approaching things. And what causes a habit like following time blocks to stick for one person may be the complete opposite of what would work for someone else. And in this book, Better Than Before, the author, Gretchen Rubin, introduces what she calls the 4 tendencies. Yes, the 4 tendencies. Christy knows. And those 4 tendencies are the rebel, which I'm sure will sound pretty familiar, David. There's the rebel, the obliger, the questioner, and there's one more. I can't remember what it is. Christy, do you remember what the 4th one is? The obliger, the questioner, the rebel, and can't remember, but I am not whatever the 4th one is. She can only remember obliger and rebel. Okay, well, there are 4 different tendencies that really shape how you follow through with things and what causes you to follow through with things. And the way to discipline yourself to follow through with habits like time blocking is to really dive into your specific type. So she kicks this off in Better Than Before, but then she has a full book on the four tendencies called The Four Tendencies. And so one thing that upholders, that's it. Thank you so much. Upholders. Okay. Upholders, obligers, questioners, and rebels. I'm a questioner, so I definitely don't forget that one. I'm a questioner, and obligers are the most common. And then rebels. So David, if you're a rebel, you've got to find a way to make it fun. You've got to find a way to not put the pressure on yourself so that you'll want to do it. The book definitely dives into it a bit deeper, because rebels, if you tend to rebel against your calendar, you see something and you're like, oh, even though I put that on my calendar, I don't want to do that because my calendar can't tell me what to do. You've got to find a way to make it something that you enjoy and that you look forward to. And I know that's kind of hard with work. So sometimes maybe you've got to put a reward on the other side of it. After I do this, then I can go mountain climbing. I don't know. Yeah, I can get a bike. I can go for a walk. Find a way to make it fun on the other side, so it's something that you'll look forward to. And he also answered the follow-up question, what if we're rebellious even when we do block out free time? And to that, I just say, you've got to find a way to make it fun. And I know that's oversimplifying it, but if you've got to want to do it. And one thing that I remember about rebels is that rebels tend to tie their actions and their decisions to their identity. And so rebels are very identity driven. And so if you tell yourself, I am someone who sticks to my time blocks, if you make that a part of your identity, because rebels typically hold on very tight to who they are, and they don't want anything that they do to be in conflict with who they are. If you make, and this is kind of from Atomic Habits, that piece is, if you make sticking to your time blocks a part of your identity, then you'll be more likely to stick to it. And Jack, thank you again so much for coming. Hope you have a great meeting. Keep your energy up, and I'll see you in the fall when we come back. Hope to see you inside the collective. And with that, I just want to thank you again for being here, for being a part of Office Hours. It's all of you that makes Office Hours what it is. And I really hope to see you inside the Clockwise Collective, where I'll be over there answering questions. If you ever want to talk productivity, if you ever want to talk about anything from routines to energy to focus to even recharge and taking breaks and time blocking, come find me over in the collective. We'll talk, we can continue the conversation, and we'll just keep this going. So thank you again for being such an amazing group. I am so grateful for all of you, and I have loved connecting with you over this first season of Office Hours. So thank you all so much, and I will see you soon. Let's stay in touch.